They said I was too sensitive, like my feelings were a problem, not the words that were spoken. The conference room feels colder than it should. The fluorescent lights hum quietly, and the projector casts a harsh rectangle of white across the polished table, slicing through the air like a blade. I slide my laptop open, the soft click of the hinge almost lost beneath the low murmur of colleagues chatting. I take a deep breath, not the shallow kind that only fills the chest. I let it sink, let it anchor me, letting every inch of tension in my body settle. I can feel the hum of the room against my skin, the low vibration of conversation, the shuffle of papers, the subtle scent of perfume and coffee mingling in the sterile air. Then, I hear it. The words land like a pin on a balloon. You're overreacting, too sensitive. The laughter that follows is soft, but it lingers sharp, slicing. I freeze for a second, letting the words wash over me, acknowledging their presence without letting them define me. My back straightens just a fraction more, my hands settling lightly on the table. I do not answer. I do not rise to the bait. My eyes sweep across the room, cataloging everything. The tilt of a head, the tightening of a jaw, the twitch of a smirk. I notice the colleague who said it, the subtle curl of their lips that barely hides amusement. I notice the others, those who avert their eyes quickly, those who look away and pretend nothing happened. I feel a micro-tremor of heat rise in my chest, the reflexive sting of insult, but I press it down. I let it pass through me like a wave over sand, feeling it leave marks without allowing it to pull me under. My shoulders stay relaxed, my posture calm, my lips barely curved in something that is neither a smile nor a frown. The projector light plays across my hands, my arms, catching in my hair, and for a brief moment, I let myself notice the way the room feels. Stark, clinical, and yet alive with undercurrents I alone can map. Quiet power is not about volume. I've learned this over years of meetings where my voice was minimized, my opinions bracketed, my reactions policed. It is about control, about knowing that your presence alone, measured, deliberate, carries weight. About moving through space with enough self-possession that the room bends, ever so slightly, to your rhythm. My breath stays slow, measured, the gentle rise and fall of my chest, a silent assertion that I will not be hurried or shaken. I place my hands flat on the table, fingertips splay, then release, a subtle, almost meditative gesture that grounds me. My eyes scan the perimeter, the glossy table reflecting muted reflections of faces, the projector casting small shadows that stretch and bend across the room, the subtle hum of the air conditioning, mingling with distant voices in the hallway. Everything is cataloged, noted. Every detail is data, every reaction observed, without judgment, without haste. A slow, almost imperceptible smile curves my lips. Not a victory smile, not yet, but an acknowledgement of my own grounded strength. I do not need to assert myself with volume or theatrics. The room will register my presence in the way that matters, not in fear, not in alarm, but in the quiet, undeniable power of calm certainty. Would you walk away or fight back? Tell me in the comments. I feel it before I see it, the subtle shift in the room. After the words "you're overreacting," too sensitive hang in the air, a quiet ripple spreads among my colleagues. Not everyone laughs outright, but there are stifled chuckles, the kind that try to disguise amusement but fail. One coworker lets out a soft, almost theatrical laugh, tilting their head back just slightly, letting the sound drift. Another shifts in their chair, the scrape of metal against the polished floor breaking the tense silence like a needle. My back stays straight, my hands resting lightly on the table, but I can feel the pulse in my temples, the subtle surge of adrenaline, the almost primal urge to respond, to defend, to strike back verbally. But I don't. Instead, I let my breath deepen, slow and deliberate, grounding me. I notice the flicker in the projector light as it dances across the surface of the table and reflects faintly on my nails. Every shadow becomes a detail, every movement a cue. The smirk on one colleague's face, the slight raise of an eyebrow, the micro-twitch in a hand, these are all data points. I catalog them, silently, without judgment. My body is still, but my mind is alert, mapping every reaction, every nuance, every ripple of tension. The person who made the comment leans back slightly in their chair, crossing their arms as if to emphasize their own authority, their laughter subsiding into a smug half-smile. I watch them carefully. My eyes don't waver. I don't dart or flinch. The room feels almost surreal in these moments, like the edges of the world have softened, and everything that matters is the space between us, the charged silence, the unspoken lines, the weight of the words still lingering. I feel the instinct to react, to counter, to assert my presence vocally. The desire is there, a sharp needle of heat behind my chest, but I do not move. I let it sit. My hands press lightly against the tabletop, fingertips tracing faint circles as if they too understand the rhythm of patience. I notice the subtle creases forming at the corners of the smirking colleague's eyes, the slight tension in the shoulders of those watching from the periphery. I observe, record, acknowledge, but I do not allow myself to be drawn in. The quiet power I wield in moments like this is almost invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. But it is there, palpable to those who are sensitive enough to notice. I am fully aware of its presence in my body, in my posture, in the slow, deliberate rise and fall of my chest. My breath moves through me as if it were a metronome, keeping time with the subtle dynamics of the room. Every second stretches, expanding with the weight of anticipation. The colleague who laughed shifts again, this time glancing toward another team member, perhaps searching for validation, perhaps seeking an ally in their mockery. I note the slight hesitation, the micro-expression of uncertainty. That brief flicker of doubt passes almost unnoticed, but I see it. My lips barely curve, the gesture so faint it could be mistaken for fatigue, but it is something else. Acknowledgement. I am aware of the undercurrent, the subtle currents of power, and I sit firmly within them without needing to claim them out loud. The room begins to hum again with low murmurs, papers shuffling, the faint click of pens. The laughter has faded, but not entirely gone. It lingers like smoke in a corner, stubborn and subtle. I shift slightly in my chair, leaning forward just enough to settle into the rhythm of the space, to anchor myself. My eyes scan the perimeter again, cataloging reactions, every tilt of a head, every micro-smile, every diverted gaze. The tension is no longer raw. It has become a pulse that I can track, read, and eventually anticipate. I feel a heat rise in my chest again, the same pulse of anger or frustration that I felt when the words first hit. But this time, it is tempered by strategy, by clarity, by an understanding that reacting in haste will give away power that I am determined to hold. Quiet power is not reactive, it is deliberate, calculated, slow burning. I let the feeling pass, using it to sharpen my focus rather than loosen my control. My hands rest lightly on the table, still and deliberate, as if tracing an invisible map of the room. My eyes meet those of the colleague who made the comment, and I hold their gaze without aggression, without need for confrontation. Just presence. The subtle tension stretches further as another coworker chimes in, half joking, echoing the sentiment in a less direct way. Yeah, maybe you're overthinking it. A ripple of acknowledgement spreads among others. Tiny nods, barely perceptible smiles, and I feel the room pressing in, trying to shape me into their narrative. My shoulders stay relaxed. My chin slightly lifted, my lips part in a measured exhale. I let them think they have an upper hand. I let the room settle around their assumptions. Inside, I am cataloging, mapping, noting everything. Every smirk, every shifted gaze, every subtle gesture becomes data for a later moment. I am present to the emotion of the room without being consumed by it. I let them speak, let them laugh, let them settle into the assumption that I will react, and I do not. A long exhale slips past my lips, soft and deliberate, carrying away the edges of the small sting that remains. I press my palms lightly against the table, fingertips tracing slow circles again. The projector light reflects faintly off my wristwatch, off the slight curve of my knuckles, painting the smallest shadows on the polished surface. Everything is noticed, cataloged. I am aware that the power in the room is shifting, imperceptibly, subtly, and it is shifting toward me, though no one yet fully realizes it. The colleague who initiated the remark shifts once more, this time tapping a pen against their notebook, a faint, nervous rhythm. I note it, watch it, record it silently. The room breathes around me, the low hum of the air conditioning, the distant murmur of conversations from outside, the slight squeak of the rolling chair wheels. The entire space has become a living entity, and I am its quiet observer, present in every nuance, every subtle movement, every breath. I feel my heartbeat, steady and deliberate, a metronome to the room's rhythm. I feel my calm as a shield, a quiet assertion of authority that no words could articulate. There is power in stillness, power in patience, power in observing without needing to assert. My eyes meet those of another colleague, who glances away quickly, suddenly aware that the dynamics in the room are more complex than they assumed. I sit back slightly, shifting my weight to my heels, and let the projector light wash over me, illuminating the contours of my face, the calm in my expression, the deliberate ease of my posture. And I smile, almost imperceptibly, not in victory, not in gloating, but in acknowledgement of the quiet certainty that I carry. The room believes it has shaped me. It believes it has provoked a reaction, and I let them believe it. Because the moment of true response, the moment of true power, is not now, it is coming. And when it arrives, it will be deliberate, precise, and undeniable. I never expected to see proof of their words, but there it was, crystal clear, staring back at me from a tiny screen. I remember the moment I realized I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overreacting. And I wasn't too sensitive. The evidence was there, undeniable, in front of me, and it made the air feel heavier, charged with a weight I had anticipated but never actually touched until now. A colleague, someone I had barely noticed in previous meetings, had recorded the entire exchange, the comment, the laughter, the subtle mockery. Every word crystal clear, every smirk and micro-gesture captured in digital permanence. I held the device in my hands, feeling the weight of it, not heavy physically, but emotionally, the kind of weight that carries quiet vindication, a validation of patience, and a promise of justice. I pressed play, my eyes scanning the screen as the words I had heard so many times now glowed with undeniable clarity. You're overreacting. Too sensitive. There it was, unaltered, undeniable, exactly as I remembered it. The laughter that followed, the smug half-smiles, the subtle glances toward others, all recorded. Nothing was missing. No one could deny it. I took a deep breath, letting it settle through me. There was a pulse in my chest, a mixture of vindication, calm fury, and anticipation. This was the moment where strategy met proof. I didn't feel triumph yet. Not yet. Triumph would come later, in its own time. But for the first time, I could feel the momentum shifting beneath my feet. The quiet power I had cultivated in the room, the stillness that had been mistaken for passivity, was now armed with evidence. I noticed details I had missed in the heat of the moment. The subtle tightening of one colleague's jaw, the slight hesitation before the smirk of another, the way the projector light caught the edge of a pen on the table. Every movement, every inflection, every micro-gesture was now documented. And the thing about evidence is that it doesn't need interpretation, it speaks for itself. The room, the company, the colleagues, they couldn't argue with it. Not truly. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the raw weight of validation, to feel the anger I had carefully stored, now tempered by the clarity that came with irrefutable proof. But I didn't react. I didn't share it immediately. Didn't confront. Didn't post it to internal chats or whisper it in hallways. Quiet power is strategic. It is patient. It is deliberate. And I had learned over years of corporate navigation that timing was everything. I leaned back in my chair, letting my fingers rest lightly on the edge of the table. My gaze drifted to the window, where sunlight spilled across the office floor in patterns that shifted with the breeze. The ordinary movements of the world contrasted sharply with the significance of what I held in my hands. The truth, so long dismissed, was finally tangible, and yet I remained calm, measured, aware that the moment of action had not yet arrived. The colleague who had recorded the video, someone I had considered quiet, observant, almost invisible, had taken a risk, and their risk now became a tool, a subtle lever I could use to shift the dynamics in the office. I felt a wave of gratitude, tempered with caution. The digital file was fragile in the wrong hands, but in mine, it became a silent instrument of justice. I imagined it spreading internally, not through my voice, but through its undeniable clarity. I allowed myself a micro-smile, small, almost imperceptible. It wasn't gloating, it was acknowledgement, recognition of patience, strategy, and the quiet accumulation of power. I felt a surge of calm confidence. The room's previous energy, the whispers, the laughter, the mockery, was now anchored by truth. And truth, I knew, has a rhythm of its own. It waits. It speaks in its own time. As I watched the video again, I caught subtleties I hadn't noticed during the meeting. The way the colleague's eyes darted toward me when the words left their mouth. The brief exchange of glances among others in the room. The almost imperceptible tension that flickered, a shadow across their carefully maintained facades. The evidence didn't just confirm my experience, it revealed theirs. It revealed discomfort, uncertainty, and the fragility of the assumptions they had made about me. I pressed pause, closing my eyes briefly, letting the weight of the moment sink in. I could feel my heartbeat steady, the slow rhythm of control returning. The temptation to act, to confront, to release the tension immediately, surfaced again, but I let it pass. Patience is more powerful than impulse. Grounded intelligence is more enduring than drama. My next steps would be deliberate, strategic, precise. I imagined the video circulating quietly within internal channels. I didn't need to post it to the world. I didn't need to broadcast it. The truth, I knew, has its own gravity. It draws attention, compels reflection, forces accountability. And the colleague who had underestimated me, who had mocked my reaction, would now face that gravity without theatrics, without escalation. The silent shift in power would be undeniable. I returned to the footage again, this time watching the micro-expressions, the slight tightening of shoulders, the fleeting glance to see if anyone else had noticed, the subtle quiver in a smirk that had previously seemed confident. Every moment now spoke volumes. I felt a surge of calm determination, the kind that comes from knowing you are prepared, that you are grounded, that your patience has a purpose. The sun outside shifted, spilling a brighter stripe across the floor, highlighting the laptop screen in my hands. I allowed myself to notice the ordinary beauty of the moment. The way the light caught the polished table, the faint hum of the air conditioner, the quiet movement of colleagues outside the office. And yet, in that ordinary world, I held extraordinary clarity. The evidence was mine, and with it, the quiet promise of change. I leaned back, letting the rhythm of my breath settle. I traced subtle patterns with my fingers across the table, grounding myself, reminding myself that power is not measured in loudness, but in control, in patience, in the knowledge that the next move would be deliberate, intentional, and impossible to ignore. The colleague who had recorded the video, oblivious to my observation, had unknowingly handed me a key, a tool of subtle influence, a means to shift the narrative without confrontation. And in that realization, I felt the first flicker of satisfaction. Not triumph, not gloating, but a deep, resonant acknowledgement of strategy, of patience, of quiet power finally anchored by proof. I looked out the window again, sunlight painting faint patterns across the floor and the walls. I let the stillness in the room settle around me, every micro detail catalogued and noted. Shadows from the blinds fell across my hands, across the laptop, across the table, carving out a visual rhythm that mirrored my internal one. I knew this was only the beginning. The moment of reaction would come, but not now. Not until the timing was perfect. Not until the truth had spread. Quietly, indelibly, and irreversibly. I closed the laptop briefly, resting my hands on the keyboard. A deep, deliberate breath. A grounding smile. Quiet power does not announce itself. It does not need to. It waits. And when it moves with precision, with inevitability, and with an authority that is impossible to ignore. Be honest, what would you do if it was you sitting in that room? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear you. I could feel the weight of the evidence in my hands, and for the first time, I realized the moment for quiet action had arrived. The office feels different now. The usual hum of computers, the soft tapping of keyboards, the muted conversations in hallways, all of it feels like the backdrop to something inevitable. I slide my laptop across the polished surface, fingers brushing lightly against the smooth edge as I prepare to organize my thoughts. The evidence, stored in that unassuming file, is more than a record of insult. It is a key, a lever, a tool for subtle, deliberate change. And I will wield it carefully. I do not rush. I have learned over years of corporate navigation that timing is everything. The instinct to react immediately, to confront, to post, to expose, is strong, almost primal, but quiet power is strategic. It is deliberate. It is patient. I let the initial surge of satisfaction settle into a slow, controlled awareness. This is not about drama. This is about precision, about leveraging truth so that it cannot be ignored without ever raising my voice. I open a blank document, allowing my fingers to hover over the keys. I start drafting a statement not accusatory, not emotional, but precise, factual, irrefutable. Every word matters. Every sentence is carefully considered, chosen to convey clarity without aggression. I pause often, letting the words settle, rewriting, refining. My office, bathed in the warm, late afternoon light, feels like a sanctuary, a space where focus is everything and distraction is a distant shadow. The projector light from the meeting earlier still lingers faintly in my mind, ghosting across polished surfaces and reflecting in subtle patterns on the floor. I trace those reflections with my eyes, letting them remind me that every detail counts. Every micro gesture, every subtle shift in posture, Every nuance of tone, all of it matters. The evidence is powerful, yes, but how I choose to present it, and when, is equally crucial. I lean back in my chair, resting my fingertips lightly on the keyboard. I close my eyes for a moment, allowing myself to map out the sequence of events I want to set in motion. I imagine the video circulating quietly, internally, within the company, not broadcast publicly, not weaponized for spectacle, but visible enough that the truth is undeniable, that the people who need to see it will see it, and that pressure will build naturally, organically, the strategic patience of quiet power. I open the laptop again, drafting emails in my mind, imagining the phrasing, the tone. My hands move deliberately now, almost meditative, as if each keystroke carries the weight of my intent. I consider the audience, who will need to see this, who will be compelled to act, who will recognize the subtle shift in accountability. I pause frequently, letting the words settle like fine sediment in a glass of water, watching them form clarity without haste. I allow myself a subtle smile, not of triumph, but of acknowledgement. The colleague who recorded the video had given me more than proof. They had given me a tool of influence. And influence, when wielded with intention, is more powerful than confrontation. I imagine the ripples that will form as the video circulates quietly, as patterns of accountability begin to emerge, as those who once felt untouchable start to recognize the inevitability of truth. Every movement I make is deliberate. I adjust the chair, lean forward slightly, tap my pen softly against the desk. Shadows from the blinds cut across the office, stretching and shifting like the passage of time itself. I notice every detail, the way light reflects off the polished table, the hum of the computer, the subtle shifts in posture as a colleague walks past the doorway. The world continues, unaware, but I am fully present, fully aware, fully in control. I think back to the meeting, to the laughter, the smirks, the whispered judgments. I catalog it all again, mentally, letting each memory strengthen my resolve. I do not need to shout or argue. I do not need to expose or escalate. The strategy is patient. The strategy is silent. The strategy is deliberate. And when the time is right, it will be undeniable. I draft and redraft my statement, each iteration cleaner, sharper, more precise. I read the words aloud softly, letting them roll across my tongue, testing the cadence, testing the weight, testing the clarity. There is no room for ambiguity, no space for misinterpretation. Every word must land exactly as intended. I close the laptop for a moment and rest my hands lightly on the table. I inhale slowly, deeply, letting my breath anchor me. Quiet power is not passive, it is intentional. It is measured. It is patience, tempered by intelligence and strategy. I feel the subtle shift of anticipation within me, a quiet energy that is not anger, not triumph, but readiness. I imagine the reactions that will ripple through the company once the video begins to circulate. The colleague who laughed, the ones who smirked, the people who dismissed me, they will all confront the truth in time. And I will be ready, not with theatrics, not with confrontation, but with calm, deliberate clarity. Their uncertainty, their subtle discomfort, will be the natural consequence of my strategic patience. The afternoon light shifts again, warmer now, spilling across the office floor and highlighting the edges of my laptop. I trace the reflection with my fingertips, anchoring myself. The world outside continues, oblivious to the careful orchestration taking shape inside these walls. And yet, within this ordinary space, extraordinary momentum is building. Every gesture, every draft, every breath is a part of it. I allow my eyes to rest briefly on the hallway outside, imagining the quiet circulation of the video, the subtle but inevitable pressure building among leadership and colleagues. The truth does not need to shout. The truth does not need to demand attention. It carries its own gravity. And the strategy is simply to let that gravity work in its own time, steadily, inevitably, silently. I take another deep breath, allowing my chest to rise and fall, letting calm settle over me like a shield. The weight of the evidence, the subtle anticipation of accountability, the quiet certainty of the strategy, it all combines into a singular clarity. I feel a pulse of calm satisfaction, tempered by awareness. The moment of true influence is approaching, but it is not yet here. Patience is key. Timing is everything. Quiet power waits. I open the laptop again, reviewing my notes and statements. Every detail is precise. Every word deliberate. I lean back slightly, letting the afternoon sunlight wash over me, tracing shadows across my hands and the polished surface of the desk. I feel fully grounded, fully present, fully in control. And I know, without a doubt, that when the time comes, the truth will speak for itself, and I will stand beside it, calm, unwavering, and utterly undeniable. Watch the room shift before my eyes, subtle at first, then undeniable. The truth I had waited for was finally moving on its own. It began almost imperceptibly. A soft ripple in the hallway, the faint murmur of voices just outside the conference room, and then tiny glances exchanged between colleagues, eyes darting with an unfamiliar tension. The video had started circulating quietly, internally. Not a broadcast, not an announcement, just whispers and subtle shares through private channels. And yet, already, the energy in the office had begun to bend. I feel my posture remain deliberate, calm, hands resting lightly on the polished table, fingertips tracing faint, unconscious patterns, a quiet metronome grounding me. The colleagues who once laughed, who smirked, who whispered dismissively, now shift subtly in their chairs. A slight hesitation before they speak, a quick glance at someone else to confirm tiny cracks forming in the facades they had so confidently displayed. I don't move. I don't speak. My eyes sweep the room slowly, cataloging every micro-expression, every twitch of the lips, every subtle twitch in posture. One colleague, the one who had made the original comment, fidgets slightly, hand tapping against a notebook, pen hovering mid-air as if unsure whether to continue. Their confident smirk is gone, replaced by a faint shadow of uncertainty. The quiet power I cultivated, the patience I maintained, is now manifesting without my voice, without confrontation. I take a slow, deliberate breath, letting my chest expand, then exhale fully. I notice the soft reflection of the late afternoon sunlight on the polished table, glancing across the surface at my own hands. The ordinary office hum, computers, phones, distant conversations now feels layered with tension, almost musical in its subtle cadence. The room is alive, responsive, and I am at its center without moving an inch. Another colleague walks by the doorway, pausing slightly, just enough to notice the subtle energy shift. Their eyes flick to mine for a split second, hesitant, uncertain, before moving on. The ripple spreads. The room is no longer the same as it was yesterday, or even earlier this morning. The quiet gravity of truth is bending perceptions, bending posture, bending confidence, and it is doing so naturally, without theatrics, without spectacle. I lean back slightly in my chair, the weight of patience grounding me further. I feel the subtle surge of satisfaction, not triumph, not gloating, but acknowledgement. The strategy, the timing, the patience, it is working. The colleague who mocked me earlier sits rigidly now, glances darting to see who else has seen, who else might know. The microgestures, previously confident and dismissive, are now nervous, uncertain. the cracks of accountability spreading like faint light across a darkened room. I notice the small interactions around me, the quick exchange of whispers between colleagues, the suppressed chuckle that doesn't fully form, the slight tension in someone's shoulder as they adjust in their chair. Every subtle sign signals the shift. Every hesitation, every flicker of awareness, every micro-expression is a brushstroke painting the narrative of reversal. I feel my breath slow further, steadying myself. My lips curve slightly, almost imperceptibly, a quiet acknowledgement of the inevitability I see unfolding. I do not raise my voice. I do not assert my presence overtly. I simply exist, grounded, present, aware. And in that existence, the truth I have nurtured begins to assert itself. The colleague who recorded the video, still quiet, still unobtrusive, passes by, giving me a subtle nod. I recognize it. The unspoken acknowledgement of shared understanding. We are aligned in this silent orchestration. Every micro-action, every subtle communication now carries the weight of strategy. The video spreads, like light through a prism, breaking assumptions into facets impossible to ignore. I notice the dynamics shift instantly. One colleague pauses mid-sentence, tilting their head, eyes narrowing. Another raises a finger to their lips, hesitating. A faint pulse of adrenaline brushes my chest, not anger, but anticipation. The room bends subtly, naturally, inevitably. Those who once held power through mockery are now at the mercy of undeniable truth. I remain calm, measured, patient. The video ripples quietly, from desk to desk, inbox to inbox, momentum building organically, irreversibly. My reflection glimmers in the laptop screen, no rage, no need to assert dominance, just grounded intelligence. The colleague who made the initial comment shifts, posture tightening, their crack in confidence visible. I rest my hands lightly on the table, breathing slow and deliberate. The truth I've nurtured is becoming self-evident. A subtle, controlled smile crosses my face, not for anyone else, but for myself. The room is changing, irrevocably. Quiet power, patience, and strategy prove far more potent than any outburst or spectacle ever could. The afternoon light shifts again, brushing across the polished table, highlighting the contours of hands, faces, and shadows. Every subtle reflection, every micro-gesture, every pulse of awareness adds to the crescendo building in the room. I remain seated, calm, present, the center of an invisible shift in power. The colleague who once held the upper hand now faces the first faint tremors of accountability. And in that slow, inevitable shift, I realize the reversal is not loud. It is not aggressive. It does not need to be. It is precise. It is deliberate. It is undeniable. Quiet power has claimed its moment. The evidence, patience, and strategy I have cultivated have worked in harmony to create a shift that no one in the room can deny and no one will forget. You won't believe what happens next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. When the apology finally came, it wasn't loud, it wasn't performative, but it carried weight, the weight of undeniable truth. The room feels different today. There's a quiet hum in the air, not of gossip or whispered mockery, but of acknowledgement. The sun filters through the blinds, painting stripes of light across the polished conference table, and I notice the subtle reflection of my own posture, upright, composed, unshaken. It has been weeks since the video circulated, yet the ripple effect is still unfolding. Every whisper, every glance, every small acknowledgement of accountability has been part of the groundwork. And now, finally, the tangible result is here. I enter the room with the same measured steps, the soft click of heels on polished floor, echoing in a space that feels charged, yet orderly. I sense the attention, subtle but undeniable. Colleagues who once smirked, once dismissed me, now meet my gaze briefly, uncertainly, before looking away. Leadership sits at the table with attention that speaks volumes. I do not speak yet. I do not raise my voice. I do not demand recognition. The gravity of the moment is already mine. A senior executive clears their throat, shuffling papers in a way that betrays mild nervousness. The apology is formal, public, and careful, but for the first time, I notice the words landing with real impact. Acknowledgement, responsibility, commitment. Not vague statements, not empty promises. Each word deliberate, each sentence carefully constructed to reflect accountability. I sit, observing, letting the words wash over the room. The colleague who mocked me shifts uncomfortably, their earlier confidence replaced with visible unease. I feel a quiet pulse of satisfaction, grounded and controlled. It is not triumph, it is validation. The strategy I nurtured, the patience I maintained, the quiet power I wielded without raising my voice, has now reshaped reality. The apology, while formal, is a mirror to the truth I have carried silently, and now it is reflected back at the room with undeniable clarity. The HR director steps forward, detailing a new series of initiatives: mandatory diversity training, workshops on unconscious bias, and updated policies ensuring accountability at all levels. Each point is precise, deliberate, and actionable. The subtle gravity in the room shifts further. The ripple of impact spreads across departments. I note each expression, some relief, some hesitation, some recognition. It is a mosaic of acknowledgement, and I am at its center, calm, composed, grounded. I think of the colleague who recorded the video, quietly observing from the side. I give them a slight nod, a small gesture of shared understanding. Their quiet courage has amplified mine, and together, through patience and strategy, we have catalyzed meaningful change. The micro gestures of gratitude, subtle yet powerful, pass between us. No words are necessary. The quiet power of aligned intention speaks louder than any dramatic proclamation. I watch as my former detractors shift in their seats. The colleague who mocked me most overtly is visibly uncomfortable. They meet my gaze fleetingly, and for the first time, I see acknowledgement not just of wrongdoing, but of the authority and presence I have maintained throughout. There is no apology from them, no dramatic confrontation, but the shift in energy is palpable. Grounded justice is never loud. It is precise, inevitable, and undeniable. I notice subtle glances between leadership and the team. Conversations that were once hushed now carry a tone of careful consideration. Policies that once seemed perfunctory now hold meaning. I feel the weight of influence settle quietly around me, an invisible halo of authority born not from aggression, but from intelligence, patience, and unwavering calm. The senior executive addresses me directly for a moment, acknowledging my courage, integrity, and the unwavering composure I maintained throughout the ordeal. Their words are deliberate, chosen with care. I respond with a slight nod, calm and measured, letting the acknowledgement settle into the room naturally. My lips curve in a subtle, confident smile, not of arrogance, but of recognition for the quiet power that has guided every step. I take a slow, deliberate breath, letting the gravity of the moment anchor me. The room is still, yet alive with the energy of change. The apology is not performative. The policies are not symbolic. The impact is real. And the colleague who once dismissed me, who once mocked my sensitivity, now faces the undeniable truth. The grounded justice I envisioned has manifested not through spectacle, but through strategy, patience, and the quiet force of truth. I notice the subtle reactions of others, heads nodding, pens paused mid-air, quiet acknowledgement in eyes and gestures. The energy is different now. The office is different now. The patterns of behavior, the assumptions that once went unchallenged, are now realigned, shifted, recalibrated. The work environment has begun to transform in small, measurable ways, and I am at the center not because I shouted or demanded, but because I observed, waited, and acted with precision. I feel the soft pulse of empowerment rise within me, grounded and steady. The apology is only the beginning, but it is meaningful. The policies are actionable, and the colleagues who once doubted me are now witnesses to a truth they cannot ignore. The quiet shift in power is complete. And yet, it is not about revenge or spectacle, it is about justice, clarity, and the undeniable authority of presence and patience. I reflect on the journey, the initial words of mockery, the laughter, the dismissal, the circulation of evidence, the deliberate strategy, and now this moment of validation and change. Each step, meticulously calculated, grounded in intelligence and patience, has led to a shift that is not just personal, but systemic. The quiet power I cultivated has catalyzed change, and the impact resonates far beyond my own experience. The colleague who recorded the video exchanges a subtle smile with me. No words are necessary. We both understand the gravity, the significance, the beauty of truth executed with intention. Grounded justice has arrived, not loud, not chaotic, but undeniable. And the lesson is clear. Quiet power, patience, strategy, and integrity can move mountains, even in spaces that once seemed rigid and unyielding. I rise from my chair slowly, feeling the subtle shift in the room as colleagues take notice. Leadership offers nods of acknowledgement, small but meaningful. The colleague who mocked me avoids my gaze but cannot hide the recognition in their posture, in their micro-gestures, in the subtle tension of shoulders and hands. The truth has spoken, without dramatics, without spectacle, yet it resonates more profoundly than any outburst could. I step out of the conference room, the afternoon light spilling across the floor, highlighting the ordinary space now imbued with extraordinary significance. I feel a quiet satisfaction, grounded and steady. Justice has been served not through confrontation, but through strategy, patience, and unwavering composure. My presence, my observation, my quiet authority has transformed the environment. The ripple effects will continue, unseen yet undeniable, and the office will carry traces of this moment long after the words fade. I pause in the hallway, allowing the light to trace across my face and hands. I breathe slowly, deliberately, feeling the subtle weight of influence and change. The apology, the policies, the acknowledgement, they are more than symbolic. They are a testament to the quiet power of grounded intelligence and patient action. And I know, with unwavering certainty, that the truth, when nurtured with intention, is unstoppable. The office is quiet now, but the energy lingers. Colleagues walk past, eyes briefly meeting mine, carrying subtle acknowledgement. Leadership moves with cautious deliberation, aware that the dynamics have shifted irreversibly. And I, standing quietly, composed and grounded, feel the weight of justice settled into the space, not loud, not performative, but absolute. I learned that truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs to be undeniable. The office is quieter now, but the energy lingers. Sunlight stretches across the polished floors, shadows tracing subtle patterns on walls and furniture. I walk slowly, deliberately, noticing every reflection, every micro gesture in the space around me. The colleagues who once doubted, dismissed, or mocked me, now move with a different awareness, a subtle acknowledgement that some truths cannot be ignored. I reflect on the journey, the initial dismissal, the laughter, the whispers, the circulation of evidence, the strategic patience, and the eventual acknowledgement and apology. Every step mattered, every pause, every breath of composure. I realize now that empowerment isn't loud. It isn't about drama. It isn't about revenge. It is about grounded intelligence, measured action, and unwavering integrity. Quiet power, I understand, is magnetic. It commands attention without demanding it. It shapes perception without forcing compliance. It transforms environments without theatrics. And the beauty of it is that it works subtly, naturally, irreversibly. The office is different now, not because of confrontation, but because truth, patience, and strategy carried weight. I pause by the window, sunlight catching my hands resting lightly on the sill. The colleague who recorded the video gives a small, knowing nod. No words are needed. Our shared understanding reflects the quiet influence of deliberate action. The people who doubted me are faced with reality, not through spectacle, but through the inevitability of truth. I think about the broader lesson. Courage and composure, paired with intelligence and patience, can reshape systems, even ones resistant to change. The apology, the policy updates, the subtle shift in behavior, these are proof that grounded action carries lasting impact. Empowerment grows not from raising your voice but from standing firm in your truth, letting the moment unfold strategically. As I move through the office, colleagues glance at me with a new awareness, some subtle respect, some quiet acknowledgement. It is not performative. It is not fleeting. It is the natural consequence of integrity combined with strategic patience. And in that moment, I feel the weight of what has been accomplished. Change does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and that whisper can resonate louder than any shout. I take a deep breath, letting the calm confidence settle through me. The lesson is clear. Quiet power wins. Grounded intelligence transforms. Patience delivers justice. And the truth, when nurtured and timed with intention, cannot be ignored. This is not just my story. It is a story for every Black woman in corporate spaces, for anyone who has been dismissed or told they are too sensitive. The truth has a voice. It just needs someone steady enough to let it speak. I glance around the office one last time, light spilling across desks and walls, noticing small gestures of acknowledgement. A nod, a glance, a subtle shift in posture. The environment carries the imprint of justice, quiet and profound. And I know, without needing to say a word, that this moment, this shift, will ripple long after I've left the room. I walk away slowly, grounded, composed, and certain. The power of integrity, patience, and truth is unshakable. The message is simple but profound. Quiet power can topple assumptions, transform environments, and create lasting change. And that, I realize, is the ultimate victory. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us who we are. For every Black woman told to stay quiet, speak anyway.